The irony is that this map is being sold to Missourians under the title Missouri First. But under the leadership of those who now demand this power grab, Missouri has been anything but first. We rank 35th in children's health and 33rd in education. We are 42nd in maternal mortality, with mothers dying at rates far worse than much of the country. We are 47th in healthcare disparities by income, where poor families are punished for being poor with worse health and shorter lives. Our life expectancy is below the national average. I do not consider these just numbers. These are our neighbors who have been buried too soon, our classrooms that have been underfunded, and our babies who will never celebrate their first birthday. If this legislature truly cared about Missouri being first, we would invest in health, education, and working families instead of investing taxpayer dollars in partisan maps that silence them. I would be remiss to cite this Missouri First map as only a constitutional violation when it's morally wrong. It is ethically and morally wrong to bow to a dictator when colleagues admit that their votes change because of a phone call from a president. We're not serving Missouri, we're serving one man, and that is not a democracy, that's submission. And when a party seeks to silence every opposing voice to guarantee that only their candidates are heard, please do not fool yourselves with lies of more stability. That is one-party rule, and one-party rule breeds corruption, arrogance, and decay. There's one thing that we haven't discussed, and that is the demographic information related to this map change. So before you all push this redrawn map legislation through, I want us to remember the names of those who never got the chance to cast a ballot freely in this country. Jimmy Lee Jackson, a 26-year-old church deacon in Alabama, was gunned down for marching for voters' rights. Medgar Evers, assassinated in his own driveway for registering black voters. Viola Luisa, a mother of 5 from Detroit, murdered on an Alabama highway because she believed in freedom. Herbert Lee, killed in Mississippi for his work with the NAACP. Lamar Smith, a World War I veteran, shot on a courthouse lawn for organizing voter registration. George Lee, a minister, murdered for encouraging his community to vote. Jonathan Daniels, a young seminarian, killed while shielding a black teenager. James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, murdered in Mississippi for daring to register voters. These names may appear as footnotes in a history book or be engraved in an unmarked tombstone, but they remind us that the right to vote in America has always been paid with blood. The 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868 in the aftermath of the Civil War. It promised that no state shall deny any person the equal protection of the laws. The amendment was written in ink and in blood. After thousands of newly freed people were massacred during Reconstruction for trying to live as citizens. Nearly 100 years later, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed after Selma, after the beatings on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, after murders like those of Jimmy Lee Jackson and Medgar Evers. Congress finally said, enough. The right to vote is fundamental, and the tricks or partisan maneuvers cannot carve it away. And we must also remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He marched, he was jailed, he was beaten, and he was finally assassinated in Memphis while standing with black sanitation workers demanding dignity. He understood that voting rights, civil rights, and economic rights are bound together. His murder was driven by his desire to procure the right to vote in everything voting is supposed to protect: our humanity, our voices, and our right to live in dignity. His life is proof that the fight for representation is more than an abstraction from the left. It cost flesh and blood. And now, here we stand in Missouri. Article 3, Section 45 of our Constitution is clear. Congressional districts are drawn after the census, not whenever those in power choose. Section 10, which some point to, refers only to state legislative districts. To confuse the two is to misread the law. To deliberately misapply them is to betray our oath. If we sanction this mid-cycle redraw, we will be joining the long and shameful line of the states that have used legal language to silence voters rather than to protect them. People are telling us at town halls that they feel trapped in a system where representation feels like a string of broken promises. That sense of being trapped is precisely what fueled the Boston Tea Party. Ordinary people demanded representation because they knew taxation without representation is tyranny. We cannot afford to be a people who trade away democracy for the promise of a single issue. We cannot exchange freedom for bans on abortion or the stripping away of women's rights. Tyranny always asks us to sacrifice one liberty in the name of safety. But when one falls, the rest follow. And then when we hear it said out loud that the representative declared he hopes Missouri will only send Republicans to Congress. Does that sound like valor? Does that sound like leadership? I hear greed. I hear pinky in the brain world domination. That is the end of choice and the end of accountability, and it is a betrayal of every Missourian who deserves to choose representatives who understand their voices and fight for their communities. If you doubt the human cost of these lines, listen to Kansas City and Terrence Wise. That seat is not Emanuel Cleaver's seat. That's my seat, my voice, and my community's voice that's being snatched away. That is what real representation means when students like Annabelle Cash, Grant Smits, Brownie Wine Miller, and Naya Fritz had their art displayed in the United States Capitol through Congressman Cleaver's office. Every child in our neighborhoods could see possibility. That Washington is not just a distant place, but one where their voices, their art, and their dreams belong. Gerrymandering tells those same children to sit down and be quiet, and I refuse to accept that. The 14th Amendment was written in blood because states abused their power. The Voting Rights Act was written in blood because states abused their power. Today, if we twist Article 3, Section 10 into a blank check for mid-cycle gerrymandering, we will again be sanctioning an abuse of power. We will be telling Missourians that their voices are less than partisan ambition. That's not equal protection, that's not democracy, and that is not constitutional. Colleagues, this debate is more than lines on a map. It's about whether we honor the dead who fought for voting rights, whether we protect the living who depend on us for fairness, and whether or not we set an example for the children who are watching. If we allow this, we will tell them that democracy is negotiable. I refuse to do that. I stand for the Constitution. I stand for the people, and I urge you to do the same. History is watching us. Let it be said that Missouri stood on the side of democracy.
We've heard it said by some that Republican action on redistricting is shameful. But is it shameful to uphold the Constitution? Is it shameful to reflect the will of the people who elected us? And is it shameful to stand firmly for the values that Missourians, our neighbors, our communities, our families sent us here to defend? No, it is not. What is shameful is threatening elected officials in their homes. What is shameful is trying to replace persuasion with intimidation or to substitute fear for freedom. That does not strengthen democracy, it undermines it. This type of intimidation only attempts to weaken us, but it has the opposite effect. It only strengthens our resolve, and it reminds us why we stand here, not for ourselves, but for the people of Missouri. The other day, last Saturday, I was talking with my wife, Kana, many of you know, and we were discussing the matter of redistricting. And she began to tell me her thought process and began telling me her story. She said, when people see a dandelion, some see only a field of weeds. And then Kana said to me, when I look at a field of dandelions, when they're white and fluffy and begin to float off, I see a million wishes. That's what I see redistricting, she says. To some, it's nothing but a tangle of lines, disputes, and weeds to pull. But to others, if we choose to see it rightly, it is seeds of opportunity, a field of possibilities. It is not about choking out the future. It is about cultivating it. It's not about division, but about leadership. Not about weeds, but about the dreams of those white, fluffy seeds that can take flight if we choose to see them. President Reagan once said, "America is too great for small dreams." Missouri's too strong and her people too resilient to be diminished by threats, fear, or cynical voices of division. So let me close with this. I will not be intimidated by threats. I'll not be silenced by fear, and I will not allow anyone, not in politics, not in faith, to tell me that threats and coercion can ever replace conviction and principle. And so today, with full conviction, I state plainly that I will be supporting this bill, Mr. Speaker, because when I look at our state, I see the possibilities and the dreams of over 6 million Missourians. And lines will never diminish the dreams of a dreamer.
I don't know if many of you all have actually come to Kansas City. You may pass through it to go to the airport, go to a ball game, but you've never come to my district. My district has the highway right through the heart of it. All right, right through the center of it. And when 71, Bruce R. Watkins, named in honor of a local historic black civil rights activist within the city, when it came through our neighborhood, it busted up our black communities. It was a political motivation to separate our minority vote, but also destroy our communities. And upon it destroying our community, now, within my lifetime, 30 years later, we're now trying to reunite our east side of 71 and our west side of 71. This redistricting that is about to take place harms me. It harms me because of the impact that this highway has already done within my community. All right? I used to have grocery stores. I used to have those other options that were available to me and my other community members, but now those things are slowly going away because we have a highway through that. And it makes no sense to continue to segregate and discriminate and promote this type of separation within my community. I won't stand for it. And so therefore I am standing here and I am just letting you know the history behind it. And I have the fire in my belly because this is not right. As we continue to try to bring our community back together, bring our neighborhoods back together, then you go and you take us 30 steps back all over again. Let's do this to your district. Let's do this to where you live. Let's do this to your church. Let's do this to your friends and your family. How about that? No, you don't want that. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from Jackson, District 23.
The gentleman from Jackson, District 23.
That's okay. That's all right.
I'd
like to inquire of...
Ma'am, Representative, gentleman from Jackson from District 23? Yeah. Okay, please proceed, lady.
Okay, that's okay. I would like to inquire of my colleague from the Price District.
Does the representative yield?
Yes.
Proceed.
Thank you, lady. How has this highway impacted your neighborhood?
It's tore it apart. First of all, they bulldozed plenty of black neighborhoods to make a traffic way that has caused more deaths. Not just black deaths, white deaths, any deaths. It separated Kansas City even more. And so now the city is trying to come together to connect the east side back to where it was. And so it has impacted us gratefully.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Again, I would like to reiterate to you all that also within this redistricting, it also is redistricting out the white voices that stand in the community. So therefore, you are now just forcing all of our black votes over to one side without giving us the diversity. Okay, without giving the diversity that we once had. Again, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from the Johnson District.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Proceed.
Okay. Representative, please tell me, how has the 71 impacted your community?
Thank you. First of all, anytime that you have highways that are built through minority communities, especially with the intent to destroy them, it is often called racial or economic segregation, urban renewal / slum clearance, or highway-induced displacement. These practices were a common outcome of federal aid on Highway Act of 1956. Which did provide federal funding for highway construction and facilitated the demolition of black and low-income communities. So what this does is it's similar to redistricting. Urban renewal is similar. Urban renewal and gerrymandering are similar because they both use the manipulation of geographic areas to consolidate power and disproportionately harm marginalized communities. While gerrymandering and redlining focuses on voter representation, while gerrymander and focuses on that voter representation, the urban renewal focuses on land and housing, but both have historically targeted and disenfranchised black and low-income populations.
Excellent, thank you very much. Again, I stand to say that this redistricting at this particular point in time is not in the best interest of my community, economically or health-wise. And as we talk about an economic impact, I beg to differ on the fiscal note. The fiscal note is saying that it's a zero cost, and that is not true because there's an inherited cost of the additional lawsuits that are going to be taking place as we can continue to offer opposition into this redistricting, but also at the same time, the administrative costs that's associated with all of our election officials and boards that will have to go back and now go rearrange and reshuffle our voters, and then also the ability to have that public engagement and transparency. And so that is what's missing in this particular process, is because as we continue to go through and we are saying that we want to go and redistrict, the communities have not yet had an opportunity to have a say. That is not right. I oppose this bill, and I implore you to vote the same.